All right, everybody. Hey, I want to welcome you to another episode of Dog Pound Radio. Believe it or not, it's the 101st episode tonight. And tonight you're in for a real treat. I've got Fort Madison native and alum, Nick Flach. And I like saying this, the Flawkowski. Did I pronunciate it correct?
Yeah.
I, I want to make sure I don't screw that up because it's a beautiful name. And I saw your most recent artistic rendition. And Logan Pinnock, one of our wrestlers, by the way, he was a champion this past weekend, so we'll give
Yeah.
him a shout out. He looks at he liked this red shoe,
Mhm.
but let's just talk about this red shoe and your innovation of wrestling shoes. And by the way, man, you got to give me a disc. I'm just kidding about discounts, man. But let's talk about the shoes to begin with because
Okay.
you're going up for some or you're in third or fourth place. I've been following this thing nonstop.
Okay. Yeah, the sneakerhead contest. Yeah, I kind of fell into that thing. And there was about 100,000 people entered into it. And it's just one of those things where I got in it and I'm like, oh man, like there's a lot of people and sold a couple people. There's a couple votes thrown out there that's like, start moving up. And it's like then my competitive spirit just, kind of takes over. It's like, now we got to win now. Like, and then once you start getting into that top 10 or whatever, in that big group phase, just the fire starts burning. And so that's been fun, but that's a path forward to there's some seed money that comes with it, exposure within the whole industry. You go to LA and work with a professional designer and just kind of kickstart the whole thing. So that's one path forward there.
So everybody, remember right now that this is going to be like Nike and Jordan level. I mean, come on. No. And to be honest with you, man, I've followed your shoes and things like that, and it's super exciting to look at that. But we'll get back into the shoe business here in a little bit. I do want to, maybe the most important question that I've thrown out there as far as wrestling's this. Okay, and I wanted to start out with this. In regards to life, what did wrestling teach you besides your competitive spirit?
Mm, that's a good one. God, there's so many lessons in it. The discipline's a huge one, and it's like, um, it's the ability to dig deep, within yourself, and um, there's nobody to blame when you lose a match, and we were always taught that. I've said it before a bunch of times, but the Mick Pickford era was, no excuses. You got to beat the ref too. Get out there and fight, and that's what it always was for me, was a way to get out there and express myself and fight and dig deep. And so that's what it is. There's a resiliency that just comes with all of that, all the struggle. It's making the sacrifices um, along the way. It's like, it's one of those things that teaches you lessons that can't really be taught. That you can read about them, you can do whatever, but you have to go through the experience to be, to really get those that the deep lessons that you learn out of it. And everybody does. It's not just winning championships that get you that. It's it's being in that room fighting day in day out, trying to reach your goals, putting in the work, and ultimately getting out there on the mat too is just a huge deal. There's a lot of people that don't ever don't ever do it just because they're afraid of just that factor alone. So it's a beautiful thing.
I'll throw out there special happy birthday to Luke Rickelman. But Luke, told me a story about his adversity, his senior year, and one of these days I'll have him come in, and talk about that because wrestling really is kind of like life, man. You don't get anything handed to you. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, it's mano a mano. You know, and watching these kids compete even at the JV level, and watching them foster this resilience and the ability to be coachable, it
Mhm.
is amazing to me because, for the last, almost a little over 25 years coaching football, you don't see the same thing, as far as, stepping out there and wanting to be coachable, or you're establishing kind of that servant leadership. Now, let's talk about your old head coach, man. How old school was he? Was he because, I come from the Mike Halupnik, in Centerville, and Coach Russ Miller, but I'm gonna guess he was pretty old school, huh?
He's about as old school as it gets. Yeah. He had such a great heart, and he had a really good way of telling you what you needed to hear, not holding it back at all. And, he could be kind of mean about it, and it definitely hurt and stung at times. Hey, there's my wife. Hey, Katie. Um, and, you know, you just always knew that his heart was in the right place, and there were some kids that couldn't take it, some kids could not take that direct accountability, couldn't respond to it, but those that did, it was hugely powerful for, and it was for me for sure. I used to I used to swing by his house, all the time. I had him his freshman year, my freshman year. He retired, um, and Riley took over. I might be getting that wrong, long time ago, but
Mike
yeah,
Riley?
just yeah, who was awesome. He was great, and we had Dave Williams in the room, who was great. Took us all the freestyle and Greco stuff. It was just really, really a great time. But yeah, even after he retired and stuff, I would go by his house and talk to him. And sometimes I'd just be in a bad spot, or just like really need that accountability, And I I can remember a couple times sitting down from him and telling him my stuff, and just being not seeing, not knowing what I need to know, and him just set me straight, And he always did it in the best way, and always he was a special person.
Did he have, like, any one-liners that you really remember?
No, no, other than, I mean, there's a couple stories I don't want to tell him, just, but he definitely was, I don't know how to say this, like, he wanted you to get out there and fight, and within the rules. Like, I'm not saying get out there and be cheap or anything like that. He wanted you to follow all the rules, but he wanted you to fight, and he was clear about that. And wrestling for me, that's what it always was. And it was a fight with rules, and you follow all the rules and get out there and get after it.
Well, the wrong one. Alright, speak of the devil, there's the champ, Logan Pinnock, in the
Champ,
chat. Champ,
yeah.
man!
I've been watching, and I love watching the people that are live streaming. So if you're doing that, thank you. Keep doing that. I watched some girls matches this weekend that were awesome. I watched some of the boys matches, and it's super cool. I love that aspect of being able to see those live. But Logan is fun to watch. He creates a lot of action, and he gets out there, fights, and goes. It's like he needs to refine technique, Logan. Um, you know, be a little more strategic in some things. But man, he's tough, looking good, and like has that confidence and fight for sure. You can see it.
He kinda reminds me of a little bear, that, is just gonna grab you and throw you to the ground, but, in all reality, I still don't have a nickname for Logan yet, on the mat,
Mm.
so maybe you can help me with that, but before we end. But, hey, as far as live
We need to
streaming,
call him he's the punkster.
the punkster? Alright,
The
alright.
punkster. Yeah, punkster could be a good one.
Well, and maybe we can get him to continue his mullet and, like, color it blonde, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, he's tell you what, watching him wrestle, sometimes if you blink, it's over. And I'm excited about this weekend. Thursday I'll get a broadcast both the girls and the guys, and then Friday and Saturday I'm going to be podcasting nonstop, and then I think Flow Wrestling's gonna have coverage, so which is super awesome, for Fort Madison. Okay, he
Yeah.
says he says negative on the puncture. All right, all right. We'll we'll, we'll come back to it, but you know, kind of looking back, do you remember standing on the pinnacle as a two-time state champ, or do you still remember some of your losses?
Uh, I mean, both. Um, there's losses that for sure have a hard time getting out of my head, but just missed opportunities. You know, big matches. But I won a lot of those too. So I don't know. The whole thing is just a ton of fun.
Well, 85 and 7 is a pretty remarkable record.
I don't think that's right.
Is that not right? Did you win over 100?
Maybe I lost more than that. I know that because I lost like 17 matches my first year. I was like barely over 500 my freshman year. I was like 18 and 17. And I had wrestled when I was a little kid, quit for a long time, was totally into basketball. Loved basketball. My dad was a basketball star, had a bunch of records in Fort Madison. It's just he's amazing. Um, and he was my hero, growing up, and like I wanted to play basketball. Then Jordan and the Bulls were going off right around then. It was just like basketball heaven, for me. And I was good. I scored a lot of points and always started and it was aggressive and played good D and all that. But so I didn't wrestle for a while. I came back in like 8th grade, basically. I was getting in fights and stuff like that. And my parents are like, you're wrestling, you need something to do. And I went out and I went, I think 7 or 8 and 1 in junior high, and lost to Josh Dorothy, who was a big just rival, and he was like really, really tough. And so then in high school, that's a big decision for me, which way to go. There's just like some different things going on. My brother wrestled, and there's all kinds of people that liked wrestling. And I was not getting taller, and so I just chose that path, and it was great. But my freshman year, I weighed we had Brian Beck, who was a 103-pounder, very, very good, or 112. Sorry, Matt Nelson was 103, very tough, couple-time place winner. And I weighed like 115 to 119 on any given day, like maybe, like probably more like 115 most days. And I ended up wrestling 119. I could win that spot. And I was a freshman on varsity. That was like awesome for me. And I got out there and just scrapped. And I was like learning how to wrestle at that time. Essentially, I kind of didn't have that long history, and so I lost a lot of matches that year. Like I think I was 19 and 17 or something like that. It was like barely over 500, but I got better, like a lot better as the year went on, and qualified for state at district and almost beat the guy that was like 31-0. Greg Myers was his name. I got him in a spladle, and he was definitely pinned.
But you had him down, right?
Ended up losing that match, and then I got to go to the wrestle back, and lateral dropped the guy in overtime to qualify for state. That was like huge for me. It was just like, and then I went to state, and I was like, I didn't even know what state was or like what it was about. I'd never been there. So it was just this entirely new world, and like I hadn't even really thought about like going there and winning it. I mean, I guess I should say I had put that as a kind of a goal, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. And
Well,
so, yeah,
you look at the Barn versus Wells Fargo.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I just, mhm.
do you still kind of get butthurt that they had to take all that nostalgia out of there, or is it just the changing of the guard, changing of the times?
I'm okay with it. I'm pretty good with changing of the guard, but I hear you. I know what you mean for sure.
Now you grew up in that, as a freshman in the 119, man. That was like a Chad Zappital, Terry Brands, the Steiner. I mean that's a tough weight class. And for a
Mhm.
freshman to go out there and scrap like that, man, were you ever nervous, or did your coach just say, "Hey, man, just go do it"?
I was horribly nervous, and that was part of the thing, and that was a big turning point for me was like getting over that. I mean, I would go out there, especially in the beginning, especially my freshman year, and just freeze. It was like I would go out there, face up, and it was like something would go. It was like, oh, I need to do this, and it was like that moment's gone. The minute that you're like consciously thinking about it, and so there's no reaction, and it's just like that builds on itself in your head, and so you got to do something about it. And eventually, I got into like doing meditation and kind of a long roundabout story there, but like that, really getting into my head and like dealing with things, that's one of those deep lessons that you have to deal with, and it's not just wrestling; it's probably all things, but if you can get that figured out and really get in the moment and be your best self, get all that stuff out of the way, that's when things start changing, and that's how it happened for me.
Do you read a lot about like stoicism? Because
Mhm,
that's kind of
mhm.
a similar, type of being and things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm pretty big into philosophy, and I'm kind of constantly studying them. Marcus Aurelius is, someone I'm definitely paying attention to. I forget what I saw the other day. It was something like, he had the secrets of the universe figured out. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with. It's not necessarily easy, like the Stoicism path, and obviously that's essentially the main criticism is the functionality of living like that, and I get that too. Trying to live that hard line. You got to find a balance in all of it. You got to have fun along the way. That's why Flawkowski exists for me. You know.
Well, and let's talk. We can always come back to wrestling because I could probably talk for 3,000 days about wrestling. Anyway, Kyle Riddle says dog. By the way, he's got the dog post for you. But let's talk about this Flakowski, and you're an engineer, correct?
Yeah. Well.
Okay,
Yeah. Hmm.
management stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, you're getting into shoes, which, by the way, I do like your wrestling shoes. Would you mind? I mean, I know we talked briefly before we started, but can
Hmm.
you tell a little bit about that story on the beginning of Flakowski?
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, the name Flakowski, that whole thing came out in high school, and I've been thinking about this, and I can't even remember really where it originated from because it's usually me and like Victor Martinez and other just people in our crew just clowning, and it came out of somewhere, and Crooks was in there. I took newspaper. I think was it my freshman year or maybe sophomore year. It was somewhere in there. I started writing, under a pen name of Flawkowski, Nikolai Flawkowski, and it was like, just kind of a funny thing. And then I eventually entered a wrestling tournament under the name and won, which was like the most awesome thing because I like filled out my name and put this thing in, and like nobody knew. And I was like already good at that point, like, you know, really good, especially in freestyle and
What
Greco.
wrestling meet was this?
I don't know. It was
Yeah.
somewhere in Southeast Iowa, like it was a small one, I want to say like maybe Riverside or something like that. Um, and I like go up to the bracket. I'm standing there, like looking at the bracket, and I'm like, it's some other kid comes up and he's kind of like looking at me, and people knew me down there, and it's like I didn't say anything, and then went out, got out the mat, and shook hands, and it was just like the look on his face was so funny. Um, but yeah, Flawkowski, that's it. It started way back when, and I've like kept it alive, sort of using it for this and that, writing stuff or just goofing around with it. I mean, that's where it came from. Just having fun. And as it's gone on, it's become a little more than that to me. It's become, it sort of represents a muse in the sense of like, here's like something that I can look at and I can do whatever I want with. It's just like complete creativity, complete openness. And it's like, I've like sat and thought through it, and it's just like with all, like what could Flawkowski do? Like and I think everybody should kind of ask themselves that question of like, what would you do if you didn't have anything holding you back? If you just wanted to have fun, enjoy this life, like what would be your most inspirational thing? And for me, that's what Flawkowski represents. It's like this useful fun, like, creative, open. And so that's, I ultimately, kind of told you the longer story of the shoe, how I got into that. And that's, going with the Flawkowski piece, like that's where it kind of comes from, is like, it's a muse in a sense.
And you look at this muse, and we all have to find our passion and our vice, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I mean we can only take what we're passionate about in certain instances, especially when we look at employment so far. And
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
so you would recommend that if you ever got in like a rut in life, you have to find out what you're passionate about in order to kind of sink off some of those negative vibes that may hit you at central
Yeah.
work stuff.
I think passion comes with movement, so it's like, I mean, you could have something that you're like, I totally love this, but you just can't get going, And it's like you might actually get into that thing that you think you're passionate about, and you might not like it at all. There might be just a different reality there. And so it's really just about movement, and it's kind of like the same thing with wrestling, just like creating space and moving, and I think that's what people really need to do when you get stuck, is just start moving, and that could be anything for, we were talking earlier, and it's like the art stuff for me is a huge outlet, um, to just do art stuff and put it on something and like bring it into existence. And there's just this really satisfying thing of having that happen. But it all takes movement, of just doing it, trying it, being incredibly comfortable with imperfection along the way. Because I'd say most of the stuff there's just like all kinds of crap, I've like iterated through and over on top of it. It's like eventually, it's like you just move through that so much, and I was like, oh wait, I kind of like that. That's pretty great, So
Do you think it's important to embrace our failures and our weaknesses in order for us to learn to be able to foster that resiliency?
100%, yeah, yeah. You got to be real with yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. And I'm still doing that to this day. Just and that always happens, because if you're growing, you're leveling up, and you're essentially creating new weaknesses in whatever level up situation that you've created. But you like failure for sure. It's part of the journey. Like if you're never gonna go after it, um, you're just not gonna move. And if you're always avoiding failure, you're never going to get there. And so, yeah, you got to be able to plow through it. And a lot of people are super careful, make great things, and like hardly ever fail. And like, great for them. I'm not that way. It's learning. For me, it's like I want to fail like as fast as possible. Um, and I shouldn't even say it like that. Like, I don't really want to fail. um, but you just got to be ready for it. You just got to be ready for it. It's just like, taking a shot in a match, in a wrestling match or something. Like, you got to get out there and go after it. And if you don't, you're not going to score any points. You're not going to do anything. So you got to you got to have that courage and get through it and take that chance and like know that there's a really good chance you're going to fail and deal with it.
Zach Bogle, I had him on last week. He does stalemates. And he was talking about how many times he didn't take that chance, and he didn't take that chance until his district match. And he took down the number 1 ranked guy, but he ended up losing. But man, that's where that's something, as a coach, I'm always trying to, work on the psychology of this thing, because
Yeah.
do you think it truly, because I remember Halupnik saying it's 99% mental banks and it's 1% physical. I thought that was BS, but I mean, what do you think about it?
I mean, there's a physical component, like you can't get around it. Like, sorry, but they tie together, and there's just a balance and to be found between those two things. I think what he's really saying is like the physical side is like easy, like it feels like it's 1%, because it's like show up when you're supposed to, work as hard as you can, and you're physical, lift the weights, run, you do all that. Like it's not complicated, but doing all of that every single day when you don't feel like it, when you don't feel good, when whatever deck is stacked against you, which there's always one, and just always persevering through it all the time, that's that 99%. That's just where it's like everything. That's just where it's at.
Do you have to embrace some downtime? I mean, I'm kind of
Sure.
I'm an overthinker, and my brain never shuts off. It drives me crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
trust me, I've been obsessing over this sneakerhead contest. It's like I'm like laying in bed at 4 a.m, like, okay,
where am I at?
it's like I gotta stop. It's important, the downtime's important. It like throws you off, you obsess too much. I remember being like that in high school, just like, I feel like I was up for all wrestling season.
And how much weight did you have to cut? Did you have to cut any back then?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. Like, I think so. My freshman year was the year of like no weight cutting. And then I like overdid it, my sophomore year. And of course, Victor was there at 25. Yeah, he was at 125 that year. And yeah, he was 2 years older. So that was the year he won it. And that would have been a good weight for me. I probably could have went up to 30, or challenged Victor. I don't know. Weird. He's crazy tough, but it just, Rascon was at 130, who was like a really good friend of mine. And I don't know, that was the year before. I don't know. And anyway, like it was the right move at the time. I went to 119 and I had grown a ton between my freshman and sophomore year and got very strong. And it's more of like a 140, weighing like 140 something, I cut to 119 that year. And then sophomore year, or junior year, I went to 125. And that was a really tough weight cut also. And then my senior year, though, I was at 135 and I had kind of figured some things out and my weight was stable. And I was, most days I was in the 130 something, 138 or 9 after practice and feeling good, and that's where it's at. Like I did not put 2 and 2 together until probably way too late, essentially after I was done. But like the whole rule change that happened when a couple people died that year. And I was in college. I was my second year because I wrestled 134 my freshman year, which was that was really, really tough to make. But we had 24-hour weigh-in, and we had it down. You could cut 15, 20 pounds, over the course of whatever. You could recover. You could cut a ton of weight and recover in 24 hours. That was just how it was. And the better shape you were in, the easier the recovery was going to be. But when they switched that to a 1 hour weigh-in, like that was something I never really got the adjustment for, because they added 7 pounds to each weight class, so my weight became 141, and I stayed there. But that hour weigh-in was like, that was tough.
Oh man. So, 2 state championships. You go to UNI, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Which, I mean, they've pushed out a ton of great wrestlers up there, and they got an awesome program. What was it like going up there? Because I mean, let's face it. You win a couple state titles, man. You're the big fish. But what was it like? How did you get brought back down to ground level when you show up to college? Were you just in awe? Were you nervous again? Did you have to fight through all that stuff, or?
No, man, I was like, I just ran harder. I did not have that kind of transition. I had redshirted my freshman year, and wrestled a bunch of open competitions and did really well. I beat Tony Davis that year, won OW at a UNO under 20. Beat a bunch of people, did good, and I was like, also the first time in a very long time, because I was redshirting, able to just kind of be a normal human for a little bit. And that was probably tough on me. That was, because then it's like all this stuff with it. In college was like, all the philosophy classes, and like I used to play chess all the time. I'd stay up late doing all kinds of stuff, definitely going out, and, just burning the candle on, I used to call it all three ends. 'Cause that's just how I was.
Taking back to those moments, what was that? The transition as far as from a high school to a college coach. Were they even more old school, or were they? I mean,
I had Don Briggs, and Joel Greenlee. They were, Don Briggs was the head coach, Joel Greenlee was the assistant when I went there, and the UNI wrestlers were just great. Like I just loved them. I was just in heaven there. Dan Kelgard's, it was David Kelgard's older brother, was there, and he had coached us in Greco and stuff. And then like Jeff Bellows, who's also Council Bluffs. Like there's this whole Council Bluffs time, which is just just awesome. And like my team, I love the people on the team. And Briggs was remind me a lot of Coach Riley, in the sense that he was like just really good at keeping you happy and kind of having fun. And like he was like that, but even another level. Like he was a rock climbing instructor, and he would take us rock climbing. There's a ton of team camaraderie, and I loved it. And then he retired, or kind of got forced out there after my redshirt freshman year there. Then we got Coach Manning, who's head coach at Nebraska now, and Penrith came in, and Steve Hamilton. Oh, and Alan Freed was there my freshman year, and he was like my best friend and like hero. That guy was like awesome. I used to hang out with him all the time, and just learned a ton of stuff from him, like on and off the mat, like all around. And so, yeah, I was just in a really good spot. Then my freshman year there, when I started competing, that was a really, really strong year. That year, I think I, only lost a handful of matches, and lost in the All-American round at NCAA's, and was kind of looking good, and had some injuries kind of come into play coming out of that, though.
and that's that was an important question that I wanted to ask. You know what I mean? You tonight. What advice would you give those that get injured and they, and obviously had a great chance of, you know what I'm saying, and
Mhm.
embracing the competition? What advice do you give to those individuals to get through that?
Yeah, I would say just get back on it. I don't know. I mean, it's tough. Back then it was just different with like um, the treatments and recovery. I think now, everything's kind of going a better way. I had staph in my elbow that required, I had 3 surgeries on it to get that kind of straightened out. And I don't know. I mean, that year was really tough on me. That was my sophomore year, and I'd beaten Doug Schwab, pretty handily earlier in the year over at UNO, and I'm ranked in top 10 or whatever, and you know, just I had to get the surgery done. It was like mid year. I came out of it. It was like, I don't know, right before regionals. And I probably could have wrestled, but I just, I was also so burnt out from cutting weight and having a couple surgeries and stuff. But I think it's like, I don't know, like I know that for me, getting sleep and rest and doing all the things right, would have helped with injuries, not like, probably helped not get some injuries, but at the same time, like they're just going to happen. And it's like, what can you do? So if you're somebody who has something that just goes down, and it's like, you just gotta like just move on from it, and like, take it for what it is, and like take it as an opportunity to persevere. I mean, that's the best thing you can do in any type of adversity situation, is just look at it as an opportunity. It's like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to learn something, to overcome something. And if you look at it like that, then it's like, you're good almost no matter what throws at you. And that goes back to the question you're asking about, what does wrestling teach you? That's what it is.
Adversity, fighting through all those sorts of things. Absolutely. Are you? What place are you in currently?
Oh, in the competition?
Yeah, you better check.
I better check here.
You've
I
you
think
you
fourth. I'm in fourth. I like holding fourth steady here for a while. There's been a lot of votes coming in and stuff though, so I know I think we've got to be getting close to the
ooh,
third person. I think I can't see any of the votes, or any of the totals. I do know that they reset. They reset everything when it hit the quarterfinals, so like everybody goes to zero and starts over. I did not know that, and so I don't know. I don't know how far apart we are. I just don't think it's probably that far, but who knows?
24 hours?
What's that?
Is it 24 hours left?
No, there's about 4 days
4
of
days?
this. 4 days, yeah. There is a 2-for-1 voting thing going on. So if you throw down $10, it's worth 20 votes or
Oh,
whatever. So that's good. That's going on right now. That ends. Oh, let's see. Uh, it ends tonight at some
tonight.
point. I think 10 p.m. tonight. I think that ends.
Well, definitely tag me, Dog Pound Radio, and all that sort of stuff on the voting, because man, we'll work hard for you, man. We'll work hard for you. Um, let's go back to this past summer. You were given an opportunity to come down to help head coach Kyle Doherty, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What
Yep.
was what was that like, going back into a room? Kind of did were you constantly reminiscing and thinking, "Oh my God, I'm back"?
That's funny. Did you see the article that the
Yeah,
Democrat
yeah.
Matt Levin wrote? Yeah, it was what he called me, Marty McFly. Or I must feel like Marty McFly coming back in time, or whatever. Um, yeah, I so first of all, thanks to Kyle Doherty for reaching out to me and asking me to come down. Like that was step one, you know. I had already kind of re-engaged in my, you know, been wanting to start giving back, finding ways to, you know, be involved, dump some of all this stuff out that I've learned over all those years. And so that was good. And the pin doctors thing kind of kicked that off almost a year ago. But yeah, getting back down there, getting in the room, getting the shoes on, um, you know, being around girls wrestling, that was completely new to me. I'd ever not done that. um, but they're very good, you know. Kyle's good. Like I really think he's going to be a great coach. I mean, I know Derek's a great coach, obviously, football, but he would be a great wrestling coach or anything. Um, and so, yeah, I think Fort Madison's incredibly lucky right now.
Oh man, I'm incredibly lucky to be around, you know, all those great people, and you know, you can probably attest. You know, I there have been times in my life where I was in rooms of people where the boss might have been leery of having, you know, not being the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's it just flabbergasts me, you know, that the people can kind of act like that or whatever. But are you planning on you know, coming down to the big tournament this weekend?
I don't know. Maybe I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure. Like, I've got the 3 kids right now that are in an extremely busy time in their life. We had, I don't know, 6 or 7 kids in the house this weekend, so there's always something there. But yeah, I'm hoping to get down. I'm definitely planning on getting down for Christmas and getting into the room. I kind of mentioned something to Kyle last time I saw him, so I'm hoping to do something there.
That'll be awesome.
Mhm.
Definitely got to get you live on the podcast if you're down this weekend. But I do know what it's like having you know, all those kids in your house, you know, and running around, and you tell your wife, I say, hey honey, I'm gonna leave for about I don't know, 5 6 hours, and then they roll their eyes at you, and they, you know what I mean. They said, oh, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, let's see here. I'm not sure what they're talking about. Party at Flach's. Okay. I have no idea. Okay. Okay. All right. We're getting down to the nitty gritty here. But definitely tell everybody where they can follow you. Follow the shoe, because you know, we want you to. Do you have to be in the top 3 to go to LA, or do you got to be 1?
You got to win it. You got to win it. Yeah. So I don't know. You know, I mean, we were in 4th this last time. The whole getting out of the group phases was big. You know, I mean, we got into the 1%. Like I said, I've basically been trying to figure out how many people are in this thing. You know, I mean, all my strategery is going off here trying to figure it out. And you know, I think there's about 1,000 people left right now. You know, and you got to win this thing. In the last cycle, um, you know, was in 4th for a long time, sitting there and just kept kind of like plugging away. And it's just like, all right, just got to kind of keep trying to find. And, you know, for me, this has been extremely interesting. And the people that built this game this is a brilliantly done thing, you know, because it's all for charity at the end of the day. You know, anything that's raised goes to Oceana, which is big nonprofit that's you know, does things like protects against overfishing or protects reef areas. You know, just does critical things for the ocean that, you know, we all probably want to be done. So that's good. And yeah, like I have to put myself out there constantly, drive this thing, and it's like I want to win. You know, I'm in this competition. It's like, you know, I just at the end of the day, you know, my kids are watching, and you know, it's like, okay, I got to somehow figure out how to inspire people to participate. And like, you know, just lead this thing, and make it worthwhile. And it's like, I don't want to. And now there's people that have, put money into it along the way. And again, it's for charity. So it's not like a huge loss. But it's like, I don't want it to not pay off either. Like, I want to win. So, um, yeah, it's just interesting.
Well, again, you are a servant leader. You are a part of the 1%. I would call you elite. I'm extremely blessed to have had you on tonight, and we'll get you on again, man, because there's so much to talk about when you talk about whether it's wrestling business or Fort Madison, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, on the business front too, it's like, I've got the same mindset. All that wrestling stuff, all that transfers over. And this is not just wrestling either. It's all sports. You learn all these lessons. I've had a lot of conversations with people about it. It's like football has all these great lessons, and so does basketball, and so does wrestling, and golf, and tennis, and like there's just lessons to be learned in everything. So, and it's not even just sports, right? It's like all over. And in business, business is a competition. That's what it is. It's like this huge this huge thing of like everybody competing against each other, and in teams and not in teams, and individually and not individually. And it's just, that's what it is. So I have a lot of fun with that too, and I've got a great team, great company that I work with, so it's cool.
That's phenomenal. Do you have any shout outs?
Like, what do you mean?
Do you want to shout out anybody?
I don't know, like all the Fort Madison people, like pretty much everybody down there, Derek. Um, I shouldn't even say names because
Yeah.
I'm just inevitably gonna miss somebody, but like that's my home, the community, they put so much into me. And that's a burden, but a blessing also, and so I had a great life, great people around me from kids club all the way up and through high school. And it's just love everybody, all of it. And I'm definitely looking more and more to giving back nowadays too. So expect to be down there soon.
You are the man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dog Pound Radio will return Thursday night. We got women's and men's wrestling, and then Friday and Saturday. For everybody within Dog Pound Radio, good night.